My name is Miranda Bailey, and at 32, I thought my life as a pediatric nurse in Boston with my husband Nathan was picture perfect. 5 years of marriage, 8 years together, all shattered in one Sunday afternoon. When my sister-in-law Vanessa accused me of hitting her 6-year-old son Lucas, I was stunned. When Nathan believed her over me, I was devastated. 3 days later, Child Protective Services showed up at our door. What they discovered in our backyard security footage changed everything. Before I tell you how my world crumbled, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if family drama makes your jaw drop. I've always loved children. That's why I became a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital 12 years ago. There's something about helping little ones feel better that fills my heart with purpose. I've seen the worst cases of actual child abuse come through our emergency room, which makes what happened to me all the more ironic and painful. Nathan and I met at a hospital fundraiser 7 years ago. He was representing his pharmaceutical company that donated medicine to our pediatric oncology department. Tall with kind brown eyes and an easy smile, Nathan approached me during the silent auction. We debated whether to bid on the same weekend getaway to Cape Cod, and when he suggested we could always go together if either of us won, I found myself laughing and giving him my number. Neither of us won the auction, but Nathan called me the next day anyway, and we planned our own weekend trip 3 months later. After dating for 3 years, Nathan proposed during a sunset walk along Boston Harbor. We bought a beautiful colonial home in a family-friendly suburb with a spacious backyard, thinking we'd fill it with children someday. That dream now feels like it belongs to different people. Nathan comes from a close-knit family. His father, Howard, a retired high school principal, and mother, Marilyn, a former elementary school teacher, raised Nathan and his sister, Vanessa, with strong family values. Sunday dinners at his parents' house were a mandatory tradition that I initially found charming. The Bailey family welcomed me warmly at first, especially Howard and Marilyn, who seemed thrilled their son had found a woman with both brains and compassion, as Howard once put it. Vanessa, however, was a different story. 3 years older than Nathan, she'd been divorced from Kevin for nearly 4 years when I entered the picture. Their son Lucas was just 2 when the marriage ended, and according to family lore, Kevin had cheated multiple times before finally leaving for his administrative assistant. The divorce left Vanessa bitter and struggling financially, working as a real estate agent with irregular income. From the beginning, Vanessa viewed me with thinly veiled suspicion. At first, I chalked it up to protectiveness over her brother or lingering trust issues from her failed marriage. I made genuine efforts to connect with her, offering to babysit Lucas, bringing thoughtful gifts to family gatherings, even helping her network for potential real estate clients among hospital staff. Nothing worked. Instead, a pattern emerged that my best friend Allison noticed before I fully admitted it to myself. "She's undermining you," Allison observed after witnessing a particularly uncomfortable Sunday dinner where Vanessa questioned my parenting advice despite my professional experience. The undermining took many forms. Vanessa would casually mention how she reorganized my kitchen cabinets while I was in the bathroom because Nathan could never find anything. She'd question my cooking methods in front of everyone. "Are you sure that chicken is fully cooked? Salmonella is especially dangerous for children, you know." As if I, a medical professional, wouldn't know that. When I prepared special meals accommodating Lucas's claimed allergies, which mysteriously changed every few months, Vanessa would inspect the food carefully before declaring it probably fine, with a martyred sigh. But what hurt most was how she poisoned Lucas against me. Whenever I tried to engage with him, Vanessa would swoop in. "Lucas, you don't have to talk to Aunt Miranda if you don't want to." She'd pull him away if I offered to help with his homework or teach him a game. By the time Lucas was 6, he'd been so conditioned to keep his distance that he barely spoke to me directly. Nathan remained oblivious to these dynamics, or, worse, excused them. Vanessa's had it tough, he'd say whenever I try to discuss his sister's behavior. "She's just protective of Lucas." His blindness to his sister's manipulation became our only source of recurring arguments. 3 months before the incident, after a string of break-ins in neighboring areas, Nathan insisted on installing a comprehensive security system. Multiple cameras covered our property, including 2 in the backyard focused on the patio and play area. The system stored footage on a cloud server we could access remotely. This technology would eventually save my reputation and possibly my marriage, though I had no way of knowing that when the system was installed. In the months leading up to the 4th of July, Vanessa's financial situation deteriorated further. She lost a major real estate listing and called Nathan in tears about potentially losing her apartment. Without consulting me, Nathan loaned her $3,000 from our joint savings. When I expressed concern about this, he accused me of being unsympathetic to his sister's struggles as a single mother. "You don't understand what it's like for her," he said, though the irony that I work with struggling families daily seemed lost on him. Despite everything, I continued trying to bond with Lucas. I bought him books about the human body after he expressed interest in what I did at the hospital. I remembered his favorite ice cream flavor and kept it stocked in our freezer. When he skinned his knee at the park, I was the one who cleaned and bandaged it with dinosaur band-aids I specifically purchased with him in mind. Still, Lucas remained distant, watching me with wary eyes that reflected his mother's distrust. I couldn't blame him. Children absorb the attitudes of their parents like sponges. I just never imagined how Vanessa would weaponize that influence against me. The 4th of July fell on a perfect Saturday that year. Clear blue skies, temperature in the mid-80s with a gentle breeze that kept the humidity at bay. Nathan and I had decided weeks earlier to host a barbecue in our backyard. We sent invitations to Nathan's parents, Vanessa and Lucas, our neighbors Tyler and Brooke Johnson, and my friends James and Allison Cooper. I spent days preparing, wanting everything to be perfect. I created a menu balancing traditional barbecue fare with healthier options, grilled chicken alongside burgers, a quinoa salad next to macaroni and cheese, fresh watermelon and strawberries arranged in an American flag pattern. I decorated our patio with tasteful red, white, and blue bunting and set up lawn games for Lucas and the Johnsons twins, 5-year-old girls named Emma and Olivia. In the corner of the yard, Nathan set up a sprinkler and filled water guns for the children to cool off. I laid out plush towels and extra changes of clothes, anticipating the inevitable water fights. Every detail was considered, every effort made to ensure our guests would enjoy themselves. The first guests arrived at 2 o'clock, Tyler and Brooke with their daughters, bearing a homemade apple pie. James and Allison followed shortly after with a bottle of wine and a veggie tray. Nathan's parents arrived precisely at the time stated on the invitation, Howard carrying a case of craft beer and Marilyn bringing her famous potato salad. By 3 o'clock, everyone had arrived except Vanessa and Lucas. Nathan called his sister twice, each time being told they were just about to leave. They finally appeared at 3:45, Lucas sulking beside his mother who offered no apology for their tardiness. "Traffic was horrible," Vanessa announced, though we all lived within 15 minutes of each other. She handed me a store-bought container of cookies that still had the half-off sticker from the day-old bakery section. "I made lemonade," I offered, gesturing toward the drink station. Vanessa peered into the glass pitcher. "Isn't that a lot of sugar for the children?" Lucas is sensitive to refined sugars. This was news to me, as I'd seen Lucas devour candy and soda at previous family gatherings without any apparent sensitivity. Nevertheless, I mentioned the unsweetened iced tea alternative I'd prepared. Nathan, manning the grill in an apron declaring him grill sergeant, seemed oblivious to the tension. He greeted his sister with a hug and high-fived Lucas, promising him the first burger off the grill. "Miranda made those turkey burgers you like," he told Lucas, winking at me. I smiled, appreciating the small acknowledgement of my efforts. The afternoon progressed pleasantly enough. Adults congregated around the patio table, sipping drinks and discussing summer vacation plans. Howard regaled everyone with stories from his principal days, while Marilyn showed photos from their recent Alaska cruise. James and Tyler debated the Red Sox's chances this season, and Brooke discussed her community garden project with Allison. The children gravitated toward the water play area. Emma and Olivia, dressed in matching stars and striped swimsuits, squealed with delight as they ran through the sprinkler. Lucas, initially standoffish, eventually joined them with water guns blazing. From my position setting out desserts on the patio table, I noticed Lucas's play becoming increasingly rough. He squirted water directly into Emma's face, causing her to cry. When Olivia protested, he pushed her hard enough that she stumbled backward and fell onto the grass. Brooke hadn't seen the interaction, engaged in conversation with Allison. The twins were getting upset, and Lucas was filling his water gun again with a triumphant expression. I glanced around for Vanessa, who was in deep conversation with Nathan's parents, her back to the children. Making a quick decision, I walked over to where Lucas stood. "Hey, Lucas," I said gently, kneeling to his eye level. "That looks like fun with the water guns." I noticed Emma got upset when water went in her face. "The twins are a bit younger than you, so we need to be extra careful with them. How about aiming at their feet instead?" Lucas scowled at me. "They're being babies. They're still learning how to play the way big kids do," I explained. "You're older and stronger, so you can help teach them by being gentle. That's what big kids get to do." I gently placed my hand on his shoulder to guide him slightly away from where Emma was still wiping her eyes. "Look, they want to play with you, but everyone needs to have fun. Can you show them the right way to use the water guns?" Lucas shrugged off my hand, but seemed to consider my words. "Fine," he muttered. "Thanks, buddy," I said, standing up. "That's really mature of you." I returned to the patio, noticing that this entire interaction had occurred directly in the line of sight of our backyard security camera mounted under the eaves. The thought crossed my mind fleetingly, then disappeared as I resumed arranging desserts. About 20 minutes later, I noticed Vanessa watching Lucas with narrowed eyes from across the yard. She beckoned him over and whispered something in his ear. Lucas nodded, and they walked together toward the side of the yard where our garden shed stood, temporarily out of sight from the main gathering. When they returned, Lucas was sniffling, and Vanessa wore a tight expression. "We need to go," she announced abruptly to the group. "Lucas isn't feeling well." Nathan approached them with concern. "What's wrong, buddy?" "Too much sun." "Something like that," Vanessa said curtly. "I'll explain later." Before leaving, Vanessa pulled Nathan aside and whispered urgently to him. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw my husband's expression change from concern to shock, then harden into something I'd never seen directed at me before. After Vanessa and Lucas departed, Nathan remained distant. When I asked if everything was okay, he muttered fine and busied himself cleaning the grill. For the rest of the gathering, he barely looked at me, responding to my questions with monosyllabic answers. Our guests noticed the shift in atmosphere. Allison raised her eyebrows questioningly at me, but I could only shrug, genuinely confused by Nathan's sudden coldness. As the evening wound down and fireworks began popping in the distance, our guests thanked us and departed. Nathan and I cleaned up in silence. The festive mood of the day completely evaporated. "Are you going to tell me what's bothering you?" I finally asked as we loaded the dishwasher. "Not tonight," Nathan replied, his voice clipped.
"I'm tired."
"We'll talk tomorrow." That night, Nathan slept on the far edge of our bed, turned away from me. I lay awake for hours, replaying the day's events, trying to identify what had triggered this sudden distance. Eventually, I drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware that my life was about to implode. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, but the atmosphere in our house remained heavy with unspoken tension. I woke to find Nathan's side of the bed empty. After pulling on my robe, I followed the scent of coffee downstairs to find him sitting rigidly at our kitchen island, staring into his mug as if it contained answers to questions I didn't yet know existed. "Morning," I ventured, reaching for a cup. "Did you sleep okay?" Nathan didn't answer immediately. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed and troubled. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday," he said, his voice flat. "I've been wondering what's wrong," I replied, relief mixing with apprehension. "You've been acting strange since Vanessa left." At the mention of his sister's name, Nathan's expression hardened. "Vanessa called me this morning. She took Lucas to urgent care last night." A spike of concern shot through me. "Is he okay? What happened?" "Don't," Nathan said, raising his hand. "Just don't, Miranda." Confusion replaced concern. Don't what? Nathan, what's going on? He pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, then slid it across the counter toward me. On the screen was a photo of Lucas's upper arm displaying several small, distinctive bruises that looked like finger marks. Vanessa says you did this, Nathan stated, watching my reaction carefully. She says you grabbed Lucas roughly and left bruises on his arm when you thought no one was looking. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, my coffee cup clattering against the counter. What? That's absolutely not true. I never grabbed him. I spoke to him about being gentle with the twins, that's all. Nathan, you can't possibly believe I would hurt a child. Lucas told his mom you hurt him, Nathan countered, his voice rising. He said you were angry that he squirted water at the girls and you squeezed his arm hard enough to make him cry. The urgent care doctor documented the bruising pattern as consistent with an adult hand gripping with force. My mind raced through the interaction with Lucas. I had placed my hand lightly on his shoulder to guide him away from the twins. Nothing more. There was no force, no grabbing, certainly nothing that could cause bruising. That's a lie, I said firmly. I would never hurt Lucas or any child. You know that. My entire career is dedicated to protecting children. Then how do you explain the bruises? Lucas isn't making this up. I can't explain them because I didn't cause them. Nathan, I'm a pediatric nurse. I know what child abuse looks like. I report suspected cases as part of my job. Why would I risk my career, my reputation, everything I believe in, to hurt Lucas? Nathan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. I don't know, Miranda. Maybe you lost your temper. Maybe you didn't realize how hard you were gripping him. But the bruises are there, and Lucas is traumatized. Traumatized? I repeated incredulously. Nathan, I spoke to him for maybe 30 seconds. I barely touched him. The doctor said the bruises match an adult handprint, Nathan insisted. And Lucas specifically named you. A terrible thought occurred to me. Did Vanessa see this happen? Was she watching when I spoke to Lucas? Nathan hesitated. She said she noticed Lucas was upset afterward, and when she asked him what happened, he told her you hurt him. So she didn't actually see anything, I pointed out. She's going entirely on what Lucas told her. Nathan, you've known me for 8 years. Have you ever, even once, seen me lose my temper with a child? No, he admitted. But these bruises came from somewhere. Let me talk to Lucas, I suggested. I can ask him directly what happened. Nathan's expression darkened. Absolutely not. Vanessa doesn't want you anywhere near him right now. She's considering pressing charges, Miranda. The room seemed to tilt around me. Pressing charges? For something I didn't do? This is insane. The urgent care reported the suspected abuse, as they're required to by law. CPS has been notified. Child Protective Services. The agency I worked with regularly in my professional capacity was now potentially investigating me. The irony might have been laughable if it weren't so terrifying. Nathan, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, I need you to really hear me. I did not hurt Lucas. I would never hurt him or any child. Vanessa has always had issues with me, you know that. Have you considered that she might be manipulating the situation? Are you suggesting my sister would coach her son to lie about abuse? Nathan's voice rose again. Would intentionally bruise her own child to frame you? Do you hear how paranoid that sounds? What sounds paranoid is accusing a pediatric nurse of child abuse without any actual evidence except a 6-year-old statement potentially influenced by his mother. The bruises are evidence, Miranda. They match the exact scenario Lucas described. We were at an impasse, both breathing hard, the kitchen counter between us like a demilitarized zone. I can't believe you're choosing to believe this over 8 years of knowing me, I said quietly. Over our marriage vows. Over everything we've built together. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes, doubt, perhaps, or guilt, but it hardened again almost immediately. Vanessa thinks it would be best if you stayed somewhere else for a while, he said. Just until this gets sorted out. Fury rose within me, hot and clarifying. I am not leaving my home because of a lie. If anyone should leave, it's you, since you clearly don't trust your own wife. Miranda. No. I cut him off. I've done nothing wrong, and I refuse to be treated like a criminal in my own house. If you believe I'm capable of hurting a child, then you don't know me at all. I turned and walked upstairs, shaking with anger and betrayal. Behind me, I heard Nathan sigh heavily, then the front door opened and closed as he left the house. That night, we slept in separate rooms for the first time in our marriage. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the barbecue in my mind over and over. I texted Allison, explaining the situation in disbelieving terms. Her immediate response was supportive, but couldn't erase the fact that my husband had chosen his sister's accusation over my denials. The next morning, Nathan left for work without saying goodbye. I called in sick, unable to face my colleagues, while this accusation hung over me. I spent the day alternating between tears and rage, between defensive planning and shocked disbelief. How had a simple family barbecue spiraled into this nightmare? And how could I prove my innocence against the word of a child and the physical evidence of bruises I had nothing to do with? I didn't yet know that the answer was already recorded, waiting to be discovered in our own security system. 3 days after the barbecue, the doorbell rang at precisely 10 in the morning. Through the peephole, I saw a middle-aged woman in a navy pantsuit holding a leather portfolio and wearing an identification badge on a lanyard. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who this was before opening the door. "Good morning," the woman said when I answered. "I'm Mrs. Eleanor Phillips from Child Protective Services. Are you Miranda Bailey?" Despite expecting this visit, hearing it confirmed sent a wave of nausea through me. As a medical professional, I'd been on the other side of this interaction many times, standing beside CPS workers as they interviewed parents of children with suspicious injuries. Never in my worst nightmares had I imagined being the subject of such an investigation. "Yes, I'm Miranda," I confirmed, my professional training kicking in despite my anxiety. "Please come in." Mrs. Phillips had salt and pepper hair pulled back in a practical bun, rectangular glasses, and the weary but determined expression of someone who had seen the worst of humanity but hadn't surrendered her purpose. She settled on our living room couch, opened her portfolio, and extracted a pen and legal pad. "Mrs. Bailey, I'm investigating a report of physical abuse involving a minor, Lucas Sawyer, your nephew by marriage. Are you aware of this report?" "Yes," I replied, perching on the edge of the armchair across from her. "My husband informed me that his sister has made this accusation. I want to be clear from the start that it's completely false." Mrs. Phillips nodded without expression. "I understand your position. I'm here to gather information as part of our standard investigation protocol. I'll need to ask you some detailed questions about the alleged incident. For the next hour, Mrs. Phillips methodically questioned me about the barbecue, my relationship with Lucas and Vanessa, my professional background, and the specific interaction that had supposedly resulted in bruising. I described everything exactly as it happened, emphasizing that I had merely spoken to Lucas about his rough play with the younger children and had only touched his shoulder lightly to guide him away from the twins. "You're a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital, correct?" Mrs. Phillips confirmed, making notes. "Yes, for 12 years now. I work primarily in the emergency department." "So you're familiar with the mandatory reporting requirements for suspected child abuse?" "Very familiar," I replied. "I've made reports myself when necessary and worked with CPS investigators like yourself many times." Mrs. Phillips looked up from her notes. "Then you understand the seriousness of these allegations, particularly given your profession." The implication was clear. As a mandated reporter myself, I would face even more severe consequences if found guilty of the very abuse I was professionally obligated to report in others. "I understand completely," I said, maintaining eye contact. "Which is why this accusation is not just false, but devastating on multiple levels. My entire career and identity are built around protecting children." As Mrs. Phillips continued her questioning, I heard the front door open. Nathan walked in, stopping short when he saw us in the living room. He'd clearly come home for lunch, not expecting to find a CPS investigation in progress. Mr. Bailey? Mrs. Phillips asked, rising to introduce herself. Nathan nodded, shooting me an uncomfortable glance before shaking her hand. I didn't realize you'd be here today. We don't typically provide advance notice for our initial investigations, Mrs. Phillips explained. I was just asking your wife about the events of July 4th. Nathan set down his keys. Should I be part of this conversation? Actually, I'll need to speak with you separately, Mrs. Phillips replied. But first, I'd like to see the area where the alleged incident occurred, if that's possible. Of course, I said, standing. It was in the backyard, near the sprinkler setup. I led Mrs. Phillips through our kitchen and out the sliding glass doors to the patio. Nathan followed at a distance, his discomfort palpable. As we walked across the lawn, I noticed our neighbor Brooke in her garden, pretending not to watch while clearly observing the situation with interest.
Great.
Now the neighbors would know about the investigation too. Mrs. Phillips surveyed the yard, taking photos with a small digital camera. Where exactly were you standing when you spoke to Lucas? I pointed to the spot near the sprinkler.
Here.
Lucas was filling his water gun at the hose connection. The twins were playing about 10 feet away, near that tree. And your interaction lasted how long? Maybe 30 seconds. I knelt down to speak to him at eye level, explained that he needed to be gentler with the younger girls, then briefly touched his shoulder to guide him slightly away from them. Mrs. Phillips made notes and took more photos from different angles. I noticed her gaze lingering on the security camera mounted under the eaves. Do you have video surveillance of your property? She asked. Before I could answer, Nathan interjected. Yes, but I don't think the system was recording that day. He avoided my questioning look. Mrs. Phillips noted this response without comment and continued her documentation. When we returned inside, she requested to speak with Nathan alone. I was directed to wait in the kitchen while they spoke in the living room. Though I couldn't hear their entire conversation, fragments drifted through, Nathan describing his sister as always honest and protective of Lucas, Mrs. Phillips asking about family dynamics, Nathan admitting he hadn't actually witnessed the interaction in question. After about 30 minutes, Mrs. Phillips concluded her interview with Nathan and returned to the kitchen. Mrs. Bailey, I've gathered the initial information needed for this investigation. I should inform you that during this process, you should not attempt to contact Lucas or Miss Sawyer directly. Any communication should go through my office or legal representatives if that becomes necessary. The formality of her warning made the situation suddenly, terrifyingly real. This wasn't just a family misunderstanding. It was a legal matter that could affect my career, my reputation, and my future. When will this be resolved? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. These investigations typically take several weeks, Mrs. Phillips replied, closing her portfolio. I'll be interviewing other witnesses, including Lucas and his mother, and reviewing medical documentation. We'll schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss my findings. She handed me her business card. If you think of any additional information that might be relevant, please contact me directly. After Mrs. Phillips left, I collapsed onto a kitchen chair, overwhelmed by the weight of what was happening. Nathan stood awkwardly in the doorway, as if unsure whether to comfort me or maintain his distance. Did you really tell her the cameras weren't recording? I asked finally. Because that's not true. The system runs continuously. Nathan looked away. Vanessa doesn't want this to become a bigger deal than it already is. She's worried about Lucas being traumatized by an investigation. Traumatized by an investigation into something that never happened? I asked incredulously. Nathan, those cameras could prove my innocence. Or they could show exactly what Lucas described, Nathan countered. Have you considered that possibility? That maybe you were rougher than you realized? No, I haven't considered that because it didn't happen. My voice rose in frustration. I can't believe you're still defending Vanessa when there might be actual evidence proving what really happened. Nathan grabbed his keys from the counter. I'm going back to work. I think it's best if I stay at my parents' tonight, give us both some space to cool down. After he left, I called Allison in tears, explaining the CPS visit and Nathan's continued defense of his sister. This is insane, Allison said firmly. Miranda, what about your security cameras? Didn't you tell me Nathan installed them a few months ago? Her question triggered a realization so obvious I couldn't believe it hadn't occurred to me immediately. Of course, the backyard cameras would have captured the entire interaction with Lucas. Allison, you're a genius, I breathed. The cameras record constantly to a cloud server. I can access the footage from my laptop. Do it now, Allison urged. This could end the whole investigation before it really begins. As I hung up, a mix of hope and vindication surged through me. The truth was recorded. I just needed to find it. With Nathan staying at his parents' house, I had the evening to myself. After brewing a strong cup of tea to steady my nerves, I settled at the kitchen table with my laptop and navigated to our security system's cloud storage portal. The interface displayed a calendar grid showing dates with recorded footage. I clicked on July 4th and was presented with multiple camera views: front door, driveway, side yard, and 2 backyard cameras labeled patio and yard. I selected the yard camera first, as it covered the area where I'd spoken to Lucas. The system allowed me to scroll through footage by time, so I estimated the interaction had occurred around 4:30 p.m. and began my search there. It took about 20 minutes of careful scanning before I found the exact moment. There I was, walking over to Lucas by the sprinkler, kneeling down to his eye level. The camera angle provided a clear side view of our interaction. I could see myself speaking to him, gesturing toward the twins who were visible at the edge of the frame. Then, just as I remembered, I lightly placed my hand on his shoulder to guide him slightly away from the girls before standing up and walking back to the patio. The footage was crystal clear. No grabbing, no rough handling, certainly nothing that could cause bruising. Lucas hadn't appeared upset after our interaction. He'd simply shrugged and continued playing with his water gun, aiming at the ground rather than directly at the twins. Relief washed over me so intensely that tears sprang to my eyes. Here was indisputable proof of my innocence. I downloaded this clip immediately, saving it to multiple locations: my laptop, a USB drive, and my cloud storage account. But curiosity and a nagging suspicion prompted me to continue reviewing the footage. If I hadn't caused Lucas's bruises, where had they come from? I scrolled forward, watching the barbecue continue uneventfully until I spotted Vanessa summoning Lucas about 20 minutes after our interaction. I switched to the patio camera view, which provided a different angle. From here, I could see Vanessa whispering to Lucas, then leading him toward the garden shed located at the side of our property. They disappeared from view behind the shed for approximately 3 minutes. When they re-emerged, Lucas was sniffling and rubbing his arm, the same arm that later showed bruises. Vanessa's face was set in a determined expression as they returned to the main gathering. My heart pounding, I checked the side yard camera to see if it had captured what happened behind the shed. This camera had a partial view of the area, though not complete coverage. I located the relevant timestamp and played the footage. What I saw made me gasp aloud. The camera had captured Vanessa and Lucas standing just at the edge of its view. Vanessa was kneeling in front of Lucas, gripping his upper arm tightly. Though the angle wasn't perfect, it clearly showed her pinching and twisting the skin of his arm repeatedly. Lucas was trying to pull away, his face contorted in pain, but Vanessa held him firmly with her other hand. Even more damning, the camera's microphone had picked up audio. Though partially muffled by distance, Vanessa's instructions to her son were unmistakable. "Remember what to say, Lucas. Tell Daddy that Aunt Miranda hurt you. She grabbed your arm really hard and made these marks. Can you remember that? It's very important." Lucas's confused, tearful response: "But she didn't hurt me, Mommy." "Yes, she did," Vanessa insisted, her voice hardening. "These marks show where she grabbed you. If you love Mommy, you'll tell Daddy exactly what I said. Otherwise, we might have to move away from Grandma and Grandpa. Is that what you want?" The manipulation was explicit and heartbreaking. I watched, horrified, as Vanessa essentially coached her son to lie while actively creating evidence to support the false accusation. I immediately downloaded this footage as well, securing it in multiple locations just as I had the first clip. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely use the mouse. The emotions flooding through me were overwhelming. Vindication, fury, heartbreak, and most of all, shock at the calculated cruelty of what Vanessa had done. Not only had she deliberately hurt her own child to frame me, but she had emotionally manipulated him into participating in the lie, using his love for his mother and fear of separation from his grandparents as leverage. I picked up my phone to call Nathan, then hesitated. Would he believe the footage, or would he find some way to defend his sister even in the face of such damning evidence? His behavior over the past few days had shaken my trust in his judgment completely. Instead, I called Allison. "I found it," I said when she answered. "And it's worse than we thought." "I'm coming over," she replied immediately. "Don't do anything until I get there." 30 minutes later, Allison sat beside me at the kitchen table, watching both video clips with increasing outrage. "This is evil," she declared after viewing the footage of Vanessa creating the bruises. "She deliberately hurt her own child to frame you. That's not just malicious toward you, it's child abuse." "I know," I said, still processing the horrific revelation. "I'm a mandated reporter, Allison. Legally, I'm required to report this." "Of course you are," Allison agreed. "But strategically, how do you want to handle this? You could call Nathan right now, show him the footage, and end this nightmare immediately." I considered this option, but shook my head. I don't trust his reaction. He's been so blindly defensive of Vanessa throughout this entire situation. I'm worried he might warn her, and she could try to claim the footage was altered or find some other way to spin this. "What about going directly to the CPS investigator?" Allison suggested. This felt like the right approach. Mrs. Phillips seemed fair and professional. She scheduled a follow-up meeting, but I think this warrants contacting her immediately. "I disagree," Allison said after a moment's reflection. "Let's think strategically. If you contact her now, you'll hand over the evidence, but it will be reviewed privately. I think this needs to be witnessed by everyone involved simultaneously, Nathan, Vanessa, the investigator. That way, no one can claim they didn't see it or that it was taken out of context." The more I considered Allison's suggestion, the more it made sense. A public revelation would prevent any attempts to minimize or explain away what the footage clearly showed. "You're right," I decided. "I'll wait for the scheduled follow-up meeting with Mrs. Phillips and request that Nathan and Vanessa be present. Then I'll reveal the footage with everyone in the room." "Perfect," Allison approved. "In the meantime, make multiple backup copies of that footage. Keep one copy with me, one in your cloud storage, one on your laptop, and one on a USB drive somewhere secure." We spent the next hour doing exactly that, ensuring the evidence couldn't be lost or destroyed. As Allison prepared to leave, she hugged me tightly. "This will be over soon," she promised. "And when it is, you'll have some serious thinking to do about your marriage." Left alone again, I tried calling Nathan but got his voicemail. I left a simple message. "We need to talk. It's important. Please come home tomorrow." That night, despite the vindication of discovering the truth, I slept poorly. The image of Vanessa deliberately hurting her son to frame me replayed in my mind. Even worse was Lucas's confusion and pain, being forced to lie by the person he trusted most in the world. Beyond my own situation, I worried about Lucas's well-being. What other manipulations and emotional abuse might he be experiencing? What long-term damage might this do to his understanding of truth, trust, and relationships? Tomorrow would bring a reckoning, but it wouldn't erase the harm already done to Lucas, to my marriage, and to my faith in the people I had considered family. Mrs. Phillips had scheduled our follow-up meeting for 10 o'clock Friday morning, giving me 2 days to prepare. Nathan had returned home Tuesday evening after my call, but our interaction remained strained. He slept in the guest room and left early for work, avoiding substantive conversation despite my attempts to engage him. "I'd prefer to discuss everything with the CPS investigator present," he said when I pressed him Wednesday evening. "That way everything's on record and clear." Fine by me. Having everyone present for the revelation was exactly what I wanted. Friday morning, I dressed carefully in professional attire, a navy pencil skirt and cream blouse that projected confidence and calm. I arranged the living room with chairs facing the television where I planned to display the security footage. My laptop was connected and ready, the relevant video clips queued up, but not yet visible on screen. At precisely 10, Mrs. Phillips arrived, portfolio in hand. "Thank you for coming," I greeted her. "Before we begin, I've requested that my husband join us. He should be here shortly. I also believe it would be beneficial to have Vanessa present for this discussion." Mrs. Phillips raised an eyebrow. "I don't typically include all parties in the same interview, Mrs. Bailey. There are confidentiality concerns, and it can inhibit honest responses." "I understand," I replied, "but I've discovered evidence that significantly impacts this investigation, and I believe it should be reviewed by everyone involved simultaneously." Her professional curiosity piqued. Mrs. Phillips considered this. "What kind of evidence?" "Security footage from our backyard that captured both my interaction with Lucas and subsequent events." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "The security system your husband mentioned wasn't recording?" "It was recording," I confirmed. "I'd like to show you the footage, but I respectfully request that we wait for Nathan and Vanessa to arrive." After a moment's consideration, Mrs. Phillips nodded. "Very well. I'll call Miss Sawyer myself." She stepped onto the porch to make the call, returning a few minutes later. "Miss Sawyer has agreed to come. She's bringing Lucas, who's staying with her mother today." "Thank you," I said, relief washing through me. Having Lucas present wasn't ideal given the nature of the footage, but it might be necessary for the full truth to emerge. Nathan arrived from work 20 minutes later, looking confused to see both Mrs. Phillips and me waiting. "What's going on?" he asked. "I thought our meeting was this afternoon." "There's been a change of plan," I explained. "Vanessa is coming too. There's something everyone needs to see." His expression darkened. "Miranda, if this is some kind of ambush." "It's not an ambush," I interrupted firmly. "It's the truth. Please, just wait." 30 tense minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Vanessa stood on our porch, her expression a mixture of hostility and manufactured concern. Lucas hovered behind her, looking apprehensive. "I don't understand why I needed to come here," Vanessa said as she entered, addressing Mrs. Phillips rather than me. "Lucas is still traumatized by what happened." "Miss Sawyer, thank you for coming," Mrs. Phillips replied professionally. "Mrs. Bailey has discovered evidence she believes is relevant to our investigation." "Evidence?" Vanessa scoffed, shooting me a dismissive look. "Like what?" "Security footage," I stated simply, meeting her gaze steadily. For just a moment, Vanessa's composure slipped. A flicker of alarm crossed her features before she recovered. "Lucas," I said gently, "would you mind waiting in the kitchen? There are cookies in the jar and juice in the fridge. We grown-ups need to talk about some boring stuff." Lucas looked to his mother for permission. After a moment's hesitation, Vanessa nodded, and Lucas retreated to the kitchen, visibly relieved to escape the tension in the living room. Once he was out of earshot, I turned to the assembled adults. I discovered that our security system captured the entire 4th of July barbecue, including my interaction with Lucas and what happened afterward. Without further explanation, I pressed play on the first video clip. The footage clearly showed my brief conversation with Lucas, my gentle hand on his shoulder, and his untroubled response afterward. When the clip ended, I looked directly at Mrs. Phillips. As you can see, I never grabbed Lucas roughly. I spoke to him about playing more gently with younger children and briefly guided him away from them with a light touch on his shoulder. He wasn't upset after our interaction and continued playing normally. Mrs. Phillips watched the footage with professional attention. Nathan stared at the screen, his expression shifting from skepticism to confusion. Vanessa's face had drained of color. "This doesn't prove anything," she said quickly. "The bruises must have happened later, or in a different location not covered by the cameras." "Actually," I replied, maintaining my calm demeanor, "the cameras captured that too." I played the second clip, showing Vanessa leading Lucas behind the shed, followed by the damning footage of her pinching and twisting his arm while coaching him to lie about me hurting him. The audio was clear enough that her instructions to Lucas were unmistakable. "Tell Daddy that Aunt Miranda hurt you. She grabbed your arm really hard and made these marks." As the footage played, The atmosphere in the room transformed. Mrs. Phillips's professional neutrality gave way to shocked disapproval. Nathan's face reflected escalating horror and disbelief. And Vanessa's expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and finally desperate anger. "That's not. You doctored that footage," she sputtered when the clip ended. "This is a setup. The footage is unaltered," I stated firmly. "Our security system uploads directly to a cloud server with timestamp verification. It can be authenticated by experts if necessary." Mrs. Phillips turned to Vanessa, her voice controlled but severe. "Miss Sawyer, the footage appears to show you deliberately creating bruises on your son's arm and instructing him to falsely accuse Mrs. Bailey of causing them. This is an extremely serious matter." "You don't understand," Vanessa said, her voice rising. "Miranda has everyone fooled with her perfect nurse act. She's been trying to turn my son against me, trying to take over my family." "Vanessa, stop." Nathan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw the footage. You hurt Lucas on purpose. You made him lie." "Nathan, you can't believe this." Vanessa turned to her brother desperately. "She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? I'm your sister." The front door opened, and Howard and Marilyn entered with Lucas between them. They had apparently been waiting outside, perhaps called by Nathan when he realized the seriousness of the situation. "What's going on?" Howard asked, looking around at our tense gathering. "Nathan called and said we needed to come right away to pick up Lucas." Mrs. Phillips stood, introducing herself to Nathan's parents. "I believe it would be best if Lucas spends some time with his grandparents while we sort through some concerning developments." Lucas looked confused and frightened by the charged atmosphere. "Grandma, am I in trouble?" Marilyn knelt beside him. "No, sweetheart, not at all. We're going to take you for ice cream while the grown-ups finish their talk." After Nathan's parents departed with Lucas, Mrs. Phillips addressed Vanessa directly. "Ms. Sawyer, based on the evidence I've just witnessed, I'll be documenting that the allegations against Mrs. Bailey appear to be false. Furthermore, I am obligated to open a new case regarding your actions toward your son, which include physical abuse and emotional manipulation." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa shouted. "You can't believe that edited footage over a mother's word." "The footage can be authenticated by forensic experts," Mrs. Phillips replied evenly. "And given what I've seen, I have serious concerns about Lucas's well-being in your care." "Nathan, you can't let this happen," Vanessa pleaded, turning to her brother. "Tell them I would never hurt Lucas. Tell them what a good mother I am." But Nathan had moved to stand beside me, his face ashen. "Why, Vanessa? Why would you do this? Why would you hurt your own son to frame Miranda?" Vanessa's desperate facade cracked. "Because it's always about her. Perfect Miranda with her perfect career, her perfect house, her perfect life. You were my brother first. You were supposed to help me, not build a life with her and forget about us." "I've helped you constantly," Nathan countered, anger finally replacing shock. "I've given you money, defended you to Miranda, been there whenever you called. How could you repay that by trying to destroy my marriage and hurting your own son?" "You don't understand what it's like," Vanessa cried. "Being a single mother, struggling while you two have everything. She's turning you against me, and soon Lucas won't need me either. He already talks about how Aunt Miranda knows all about medicine and helps sick children." The raw jealousy and insecurity behind Vanessa's actions became painfully clear. Mrs. Phillips observed the exchange with clinical attention, making notes in her portfolio. "Miss Sawyer," she interjected, "I need to inform you that filing a false report of child abuse is a serious offense. Additionally, the deliberate infliction of injury on a child for any purpose constitutes abuse. There will be legal consequences for your actions today." Vanessa collapsed onto the sofa, her righteous facade completely crumbled. "I just wanted my brother back," she whispered. "I just wanted things to be like they were before." Mrs. Phillips took Vanessa aside for a private conversation about the immediate next steps, explaining the investigation that would follow and the potential legal ramifications. Meanwhile, Nathan and I stood in stunned silence on the other side of the room. "Miranda, he finally said, his voice breaking. I don't know how to begin to apologize. I couldn't respond immediately. The vindication was overwhelming, but it couldn't instantly heal the wound of his distrust. You believed her over me, I said simply. After 8 years together, you chose her word over mine. I know, he admitted, shame evident in his voice. I was wrong, completely wrong. Before we could continue this crucial conversation, Mrs. Phillips approached us. I've explained to Ms. Sawyer that she needs to come to our office to make a formal statement, she informed us. I've arranged for a colleague to meet us there. Mr. and Mrs. Bailey, I'll need statements from both of you as well, but that can wait until Monday. After Mrs. Phillips escorted a subdued Vanessa from our home, Nathan and I were left alone with the wreckage of trust between us. What happens now? Nathan asked quietly. It was the question that would define our future, and I didn't yet have an answer. After Vanessa and Mrs. Phillips departed, the house fell into a heavy silence. Nathan and I stood in our living room like strangers, the physical space between us reflecting the emotional chasm that had opened in our marriage. I need to process everything that just happened, I finally said. I think I should stay with Allison for a few days. Nathan looked stricken but nodded. I understand. I failed you, Miranda. I should have trusted you from the beginning. Yes, you should have. I agreed, unable to soften the truth. 8 years together, and you believed the worst about me without evidence, without even giving me the benefit of the doubt. I know, he whispered. There's no excuse. I never imagined Vanessa could do something like this. It was easier to believe you had a momentary lapse in judgment than to think my sister would deliberately hurt her own son. That's the problem, Nathan. It was easier for you to believe I was capable of child abuse than to question your sister's version of events. What does that say about how you see me? About how much you value our marriage? Nathan had no answer, and I didn't expect one. The questions were rhetorical, meant to underscore the severity of his betrayal. I packed a small suitcase while Nathan called his parents to explain the situation. I could hear the shock and distress in his voice as he related what the security footage had revealed. When I came downstairs, he was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. I'll call you in a few days, I told him. Right now, I need space to think. Allison welcomed me with open arms and a bottle of wine. For the first night, we didn't analyze or strategize. She simply let me grieve the innocence lost in my marriage and family relationships. The following week brought a flurry of formal statements and meetings. Mrs. Phillips called to inform me that I had been completely cleared of all allegations, with a formal letter to follow. Vanessa was facing potential criminal charges for filing a false report and for the physical abuse captured on video. Lucas remained with his grandparents while the situation was assessed. By Friday, a formal letter arrived from CPS officially exonerating me of any wrongdoing. I was grateful for the document, but knew the emotional and professional damage wouldn't be erased by an official letterhead. Meanwhile, Nathan texted daily, respecting my request for space, but making it clear he wanted to repair our marriage. During my week at Allison's, I spoke with a therapist who specialized in trauma and betrayal, trying to sort through my conflicting emotions. What hurts most, I told the therapist, Dr. Caroline Winters, is that Nathan's instinct was to believe I could harm a child. As a pediatric nurse, protecting children is fundamental to who I am. It sounds like his reaction threatened your core identity, Dr. Winters observed. Beyond the personal betrayal, it called into question how he sees the most essential part of you. This insight resonated deeply. The accusation had struck at the heart of how I define myself, and Nathan's willingness to believe it suggested he didn't truly know me at all. After a week, I agreed to meet Nathan for coffee at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between Allison's apartment and our home. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. Thank you for meeting me, he said when I sat down. How are you doing? I'm managing, I replied honestly. Work has been supportive. My supervisor made it clear that my job was never in jeopardy. Nathan nodded. That's good. Miranda, I know words aren't enough, but I am truly sorry. I failed you as a husband in the most fundamental way. Yes, you did. I agreed, not to be cruel, but because acknowledging the truth was necessary before any healing could begin. Nathan, I need to understand how this happened. How could you believe I would hurt Lucas? He took a deep breath. I've been asking myself the same question. I think I've been conditioned my whole life to protect Vanessa. After our dad left when we were kids, Mom always said I was the man of the house, responsible for looking after my sister. When Vanessa's marriage failed, it reinforced this pattern. I became her safety net, her protector. But I wasn't threatening her, I pointed out. I was your wife. I know, Nathan admitted. But in the moment, when she called me crying about Lucas being hurt, something primitive kicked in. This ingrained need to protect my sister overrode everything else, including rational thought. It wasn't about not trusting you so much as it was about being unable to imagine Vanessa lying about something so serious. It was the first explanation that made some sense, though it didn't erase the hurt. I've started seeing a therapist, Nathan continued. I need to understand these patterns and break them. What Vanessa did was unforgivable, but my reaction was my responsibility. I betrayed your trust, and I want to earn it back, if you'll let me try. I didn't have an immediate answer. I need more time, Nathan. And if we're going to have any chance at rebuilding, we need couples therapy as well as your individual work. He agreed without hesitation, and we parted with a tentative plan to begin couples counseling the following week. Meanwhile, the situation with Vanessa and Lucas continued to evolve. Howard and Marilyn had stepped up remarkably, temporarily taking custody of Lucas, while Vanessa underwent psychological evaluation. The courts had ordered her to attend parenting classes and therapy before supervised visitation could begin. 2 weeks after moving to Allison's, I returned home. Nathan had moved into the guest room without being asked, giving me the space I needed while still sharing our house. It was an awkward arrangement, but a necessary transition. Our first couples therapy session with Dr. Winters was raw and difficult. Nathan fully acknowledged his failure to trust me and explored the childhood patterns that had contributed to his blind spot regarding Vanessa. I expressed my deep hurt and the damage done to my sense of security in our marriage. Trust is rebuilt in small moments, Dr. Winters told us. It's a daily practice, not a single grand gesture. Miranda, it's okay to need proof of trustworthiness for a while. Nathan, your job is to provide that proof consistently without resentment. In the weeks that followed, Nathan demonstrated his commitment to rebuilding our marriage through consistent actions. Attending therapy faithfully, establishing clear boundaries with his family, and supporting me professionally and emotionally without expecting immediate forgiveness. A month after the revelation, we had dinner with Howard and Marilyn, who had requested a chance to apologize in person. We should have questioned Vanessa's story, Howard said, his voice heavy with regret. We've enabled her dependencies for too long, and Lucas has paid the price. We're so sorry, Miranda. Marilyn reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You've been nothing but kind to our family, and we failed you. We hope someday you can forgive us. Their sincere remorse touched me, and I realized that they too were victims of Vanessa's manipulation, though to a lesser degree than Lucas or myself. Lucas himself was showing signs of improvement under his grandparents' stable care. With the help of a child psychologist, he was working through the confusion and betrayal he'd experienced. I kept my distance initially, not wanting to complicate his healing process, but eventually agreed when his therapist suggested a supervised meeting might be beneficial. He needs to see that adults can tell the truth and keep him safe, the therapist explained. He has questions only you can answer. That meeting was perhaps the most healing part of the entire ordeal. Lucas was initially shy, but when I explained that I had never been angry with him and understood that his mom had told him what to say, he visibly relaxed. So, I'm not in trouble, he asked. Not at all, I assured him. Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes or bad choices. What happened wasn't your fault. By the 3-month mark, Nathan and I had established a new normal. He had moved back into our bedroom, though intimacy was returning slowly. The court had ordered Vanessa to undergo intensive therapy before she could petition for supervised visitation with Lucas, who continued to thrive in his grandparents' care. "I've been thinking about security," Nathan said one evening as we sat on our patio, watching the sunset. "Not just the cameras that saved your reputation, but emotional security. I failed to provide that for you when you needed it most." "Yes, I agreed, but you're working to rebuild it now. That matters." "What do you need from me to feel secure in our marriage again?" he asked earnestly. I considered the question carefully. Consistency, transparency, and a fundamental respect for who I am and what I value. "I need to know that your first instinct is to believe in me, not doubt me." "I'm committed to that," he promised. "Every day, in every way I can show you." 6 months after the accusation, we decided to renew our vows in a small, private ceremony. It wasn't about pretending the breach of trust hadn't happened, but about consciously choosing to build something stronger from the painful experience. As for Lucas, he continued weekly therapy sessions and was slowly rebuilding a supervised relationship with his mother, who had finally begun to acknowledge her harmful behavior and work on her underlying issues. Howard and Marilyn remained his primary caregivers, providing the stability he desperately needed. The entire ordeal taught me painful but valuable lessons about evidence, advocacy, and resilience. In an age where accusations can destroy reputations instantly, having concrete proof of the truth had saved my career and possibly my freedom. But beyond the practical lessons, I learned that healing from betrayal is possible when both parties commit to honest reconciliation. Nathan and I are not the same couple we were before that 4th of July barbecue. In many ways, we're stronger, with clearer boundaries and more authentic communication. In other ways, we carry scars that may never fully fade. But we've chosen to grow together rather than apart, to build something new from the ashes of what was broken. If there's one thing I've learned through this experience, it's that the truth, however painful, eventually surfaces. And when it does, it offers not just vindication, but an opportunity for genuine transformation. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to be reminded that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to unexpected light. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in whatever challenges you might be facing in your own relationships.